Welcome to the new view. Good morning, everyone. It's February 21st, 2022. And last week it was Valentine's Day, and there were actions where I live in Palo Alto where people were taking documents to county courthouses with the crimes of COVID-19. And I think it happened throughout the country. Actually, I missed it. What was that, Marilyn?
No, sorry.
Oh, okay. Did anyone else take documents? Are you familiar with it? It was the crimes listed by Dr. David Martin, and it was quite similar to the crimes that he created that I sent to attorney generals last December, but this time it was to our local officials, and then. It's been just an amazing week. There were some actions in New York City at the Canadian consulate in support of the Canadians. And of course, we're still in crisis right now. I think Diane has the latest on that. And I know that I should have organized something at the Canadian consulate, but I ended up going to a workshop with Dr. David Martin over the weekend. So I have lots of little bits of news, but I want to give other people an opportunity to share their take on what's happened this week. So does anyone want to jump in and say what they've observed, which they think is really important?
Well, Parliament got shut down in Canada, which was alarming. And so emergency, whatever it's called, was imposed, and a lot of violence in the streets, etc. Bank accounts closed, it's blocked, and even cryptocurrencies supposedly blocked. So, nothing's safe anymore. And then, of course, when people hear that their bank accounts might be under attack, they rush to the banks and they pull their money out. So there was a period where the number of the largest banks were closed for a period. So probably because of bank runs or fear of bank runs, they didn't have the cash. So quite disturbing.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to chime in for a minute here. Thank you for that, Ellen. I'm going to have to sign off. I'm going to have to say hi and bye to you all because I'm actually meeting some friends for a hike, but I wanted to just tune in for a minute, and I hope you have a good conversation today. I'll miss you, but I'll see you next week.
All right.
Okay, this is Marilyn, if you don't see my name. Anyway, have a good conversation. Take care.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah. Does anyone else want to chime in on the situation with Canada? I think we've all been following it as best as we can, but it's been a very dynamic situation.
Well, I have a very, very close friend who lives in Ottawa, and she's been reporting to me, and she basically shared a link of a guy who was going to do a streaming and where he was going to interview people on the street, and they kept shutting down his streaming. So the only thing he could do was to put record on his cell phone, and he walked, and he spent like oh gosh, maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes walking around through the protesters, so you could see and feel the energy of it. It wasn't really what he had intended or wanted to do, but I appreciated it even more because you really saw the spirit of it. You really saw the energy of the people and the enthusiasm. And it reminds me back in the 70s when I was marching against the war in Vietnam. There was that same like, yes, we're going to triumph. There's going to be a positive future for humankind. We were going to end the war. We're going to, and reveal the crimes that underlie this war. And they did get revealed. I mean, you know, Nixon resigned, the whole stuff, the whole shit hit the fan, you know. And but the energy of that, we were doing the V sign, is, you know, we were hippies and we were doing the V sign, and in a sense, it was the same energy. It was so positive. It was so uplifting. I was so enthusiastic. I got so charged up by this video. And he was just walking through, and you were just seeing people walking around, talking, holding, you know, their banners and wearing their Canadian flags and signs and so on. And it was just this energy. And so it gave me so much hope. It really filled me with hope that there are people who are willing to get out there in this horribly cold weather, stomping through the snow in the streets, willing to initiate this whole kind of, you could feel the sense of a movement. You could feel the sense of the people. And I've been reading so much about government. Like this week, I've been reading some of trying to look at the Earth Constitution solution, where our dear Ellen did the foreword for it. and I just sense that it's got to happen from the ground up. We've got to have people like these protesters to be able to bring in this new wave of this new consciousness and so on. And this was fine. This was good thinking, very good thinking. I mean, this Glenn Martin, he really likes himself a lot. He keeps talking about, well, here is the elegant and best solution, you know. He says that multiple times through the book. But it seems to me that he has this whole sense of world government and world organization. But how are we going to get there if we don't build on the protests like in Canada? I mean, this is the seed. This is what needs to grow. This is what needs to sprout, right? Yeah. And so I've been ever since I saw that, which was probably about 4 days ago, I've really been really excited and enthusiastic, and I'm trying to figure out something to write that I could post to all the, you know, the people that are kind of mindlessly following mainstream media's depiction of these truckers and the protesters as being crazy right-wing nuts and racist and all that. And I mean, they're still trying really, really hard.
I think for the most part, the corporate press has been damning them, but there have been some breakthroughs where some of the actual amazing peacefulness of the protests have actually gleaned and broken through the mainstream. I have seen that, but then the situation has changed too, where the violence has been obviously from the police forces, and I saw people being shot with rubber bullets, and it was the cell phones that were recording the attacks of the police coming and attacking the incredibly peaceful
and the horse
protesters.
trampling the woman on with the walker, you know.
Right.
That was
Right. But you are so right about the incredible hopefulness. And I think there are convoys being organized throughout the world, through so many countries, including our own. There's a San Francisco convoy, there's one in LA, there's all sorts of different plans for conversions of convoys in Washington, DC. And as Ellen pointed out, with the freezing of the bank accounts, you could see that there's going to be a lot of fear generated in order to try to frighten people into not supporting the convoys and the truckers, with the threat of the classic, you're either with us or against us, you're supporting the terrorists, or you're complying with the fascist righteous governments that are imposing their totalitarian stranglehold upon us. But thank you, Ginger. Alanna, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, a couple things. First, I did not know that Ellen had written, what was it, an introduction to Glenn's book that Ginger showed? Did you write that? And I want to mention that I've been engaged to varying degrees with the global governance movement for 40 years, and that dialogue coming with my affiliation with United Nations reform movements, United Nations People's Assemblies, and so on. And in fact, my book was co-published by the Institute for Economic Democracy. That's my book, The Earth Belongs to Everyone. And the Institute for Economic Democracy was at one point completely with Glenn Martin's group. And so they co-published my book. So here's the frame. For a government to be real, it needs the power to tax. For a global governance, the World Constitution proposing a basis for global governance to be real, it needs the power to tax. And when I would be in conversations with the global governance people, I would say, where is your clarity around what kind of taxation policy you want to impose on the world? Where is your clarity around the economics that's going to address wealth inequality? And I've read the Earth Constitutions and so on. I've given little bits of input and tried to, but it's not solid yet. If you keep taxing the Earth's people on their income and allow a few to own and control the Earth's land and resources, I don't care how nice the words are in the global constitution, is not going to work for we the people. That is the big missing piece of the global governance high-minded movement. And these people are high-minded. They've worked for decades on this. It is a global governance movement. But early on, I, in this conversation, wrote a little piece called Financing Planet Management, Sovereignty, World Order, and the Earth Rights Imperative, in which I address this missing piece. And I talk about what is sovereignty. And it basically gets down to also the missing piece in democracy. And the democracy is incomplete. It has a crack in the Liberty Bell because it does not give us economic democracy, nor does it define property in land and resources, the gifts of Mother Earth, as distinct from property and that which we create with our labor and our production. So the movement I'm engaged in for 40 years shifts the taxes off of labor, off of wages, and real genuine production of working capital and labor together, and onto the, we could call this the commons rent or the resource rent, which is the value of the land and resource base. Karl Marx called the surplus value, but Adam Smith called it unearned income. They're talking about the same thing. The value of the earth is created by we the people, and of course the original gift of Mother Earth. And that is a tremendous value. The resource rent is like a third of GDPs. But because it's privatized, if you own the earth and this unearned income from the earth, that is the origin of this gross wealth distribution problem. The gross wealth inequality comes from our lack of clarity, our lack of ethical understanding of the proper relationship of human beings to the earth itself in a most fundamental way. So that's my bit for now. I'm going to start talking a little more about that sovereignty, what sovereignty is. Because if you're allowing, which we do, originating the capture of land by a few, just the colonialism was out there grabbing land from indigenous people. And you take that use of force to grab land, and then you take the same against the sovereignty of others' rights to land, you take that same force and it becomes from a missile, it becomes an injection needle. And now you use force to inject substances that we as autonomous sovereign individuals do not want in our bodies, but you use force to inject that into our bodies. It goes straight back to the problem of the land being grabbed by a few through the use of force.
Right, and I would add too that what we also see right now is that concentration of wealth has been used to buy up politicians, groom politicians to serve those who seek to dominate the earth, create a new financial structure, continue to extract all the wealth and impoverish or destroy humanity, and inject them with those horrific bioweapons, which is what they're doing right now. But I think one of the developments that has come up this week is an attack from our side on Moderna and Pfizer, that's come from an ex-BlackRock employee, Edward Dowd. And I think it was Marilyn who sent us a link to the video where Edward Dowd has started to really make ripples by exposing the fraud of Pfizer and Moderna in collusion with the FDA to such a degree, including the whistleblower who talked about the falsified studies that Pfizer did. And he's trying to do it through the financial news, which might get some people's attention and help break this spell and inject a bit of reality into what's going on. And I listened recently to his talk, and he has been able to predict sort of in the last couple of years the rollout of events, and he is predicting enormous chaos in the next few months. And this is what I see with the convoy, their desperation, the doubling down. Maybe Diane, you could address if this is exactly what's happening, where they're actually trying to triple down in Canada right now, and whether the United States will also follow suit and take these extreme measures against democracy. Diane, you want to jump in?
Okay. All right. First of all, you may or may not be aware that I have, hopefully near the end of my COVID.
Oh, no, I didn't know.
Yeah, so, which I'm very delighted about because I wanted to get her natural immunity.
Wow.
So, let me find my glasses. So,
I had natural immunity.
Yeah. And
so, and that means that on Sunday I get to go to my grandkids' school play,
Okay.
which I would not otherwise be able to do. And except Rachel probably can't go because she had COVID over a year ago, and the CDC is lying so about that. But and also I'm not sure
Excuse
why.
me, are you saying that in Philadelphia, is that where you go for the play? Is that where you
Yeah,
go
well,
for your grade?
it's a Jewish day school.
Oh, and so
So-
that's the rule, that you can go
Right.
if you have natural immunity.
Well, no, you have, well, yeah, you have to, I'm not 100% sure about it. Either you have to be fully vaccinated or you have to have been within 3 months of getting COVID.
Okay.
But then it's too soon to
see.
get the shot. So my
You put
son,
in the window.
I'm happy that my
Oh.
son is encouraging me to go, and he's, he told them like I had, I sent like a picture of my, rapid antigen test, and said that, or he wrote to them, said that I couldn't even get vaccinated even if I wanted to, because it's too soon.
yeah, I'm surprised because my son had it over Christmas, and when he got well, he still tested positive. So I thought that it took a while for you to.
Yeah, well,
able
this
to-
is almost like 2 weeks later. So anyway, I don't even know if I'm still contagious or not.
Yeah.
I will get a T-cell test and an antibody test eventually. And I've been fighting, I wrote about natural immunity denial disorder, and I've been like fighting for it before I knew that I would have it. So I was in Philadelphia 2 weekends ago, and I'm not sure who I got it from. I might have gotten it here, and I think I'm pretty sure I gave it to Josh Middledorf. So and I had people here after the rally on January 23rd. I had like about 13 people come over after the rally, and 3 people got COVID afterwards, including Sam Husseini and Meryl Nass and
Oh God.
Hi.
I wouldn't brag about this.
delete this. Well, anyway, well, it's just, look, first of all, Omicron, everyone's gonna get, Omicron is spreading. All right, I shouldn't have said that on the recording. I mean, it's not necessarily, whoops. Okay, anyway, back to, right, anyway, so I have it and I will have natural immunity. Anyway, I'm not sure why you thought I would know anything more about the trucker convoy, although I've been following it.
No, I did it because I thought you had just posted that there was a live press conference right now with Trudeau and Freeland.
Right.
And I didn't know if you'd actually watched it or had paid attention to what they were saying. I mean, I don't think it matters that much, except that I can't imagine them actually changing their tune all of a sudden. And I can see that Biden would continue with the harsh measures and the threat of freezing people's bank accounts if they dare to support the convoys that are heading to Washington, D.C. that we're launching. Actually, this afternoon, we're supposed to be waving banners on in Foster City for the convoy that's leaving San Francisco heading south to Southern California.
Yeah, so I do have a few things to say. So I got a Substack from Celia Farber, and then I turned it on. A lot of it was in French, but at the end, Trudeau said that he was very confident that this was going to pass, the emergency measures was going to pass. I don't know what the probability is. I hope it doesn't pass. But I had been paying attention to the propaganda about the convoy, the Canadian convoy, and how they're Nazis and right-wing extremists, and they're calling Jewish parliamentarians like Nazis. And I don't know how much traction it got, but the mainstream media and NPR are promoting it as like a right-wing disruptive thing against democracy, which is, couldn't be farther from the truth. I mean, out of thousands and thousands and thousands of people, there are probably a handful of people that are, right-wing extremists. And that it seems like they planted people to be violent or so I think we have to, in our movement, we have to do like everything we can to dispel any association with right-wing extremists. So I'll give you like just one example, and that
How
Steve,
about left-wing extremists as well, Diane?
left-wing extreme, right, that just like regular old progressive or human rights people, or just that it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with tyranny and violation of Nuremberg and all that. All right, so anyway, so as you know, there's another convoy that's leaving California on February 23rd, and it looks like it's coming into Washington, D.C. on March 5th.
Tomorrow.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then and just one last comment. I saw something on Children's Health Defense, or a friend of mine told me that it's complicated. And I think Children's Health Defense is trying to figure out whether they should be affiliated with it.
No, I think I'm sure they're supporting it.
Yeah, they might be supporting it, but whether identified with, anyway, they're
part of the launch.
They're exploring it now because they have to be super careful.
Okay, but CHD is actually going along in the caravan. I saw some details about it, so they'll be reporting on it. CHD TV giving daily updates. So I think they're painting the convoy as extremely diverse, peaceful, grassroots, with wide public support from a large range of people. That's what CHD is doing.
Norton.
And Ellen wanted to say something. I'm sorry.
I don't think this hand raising thing is working, because I've had my hand up for at least 20 minutes.
Oh my God. I saw your hand, but I didn't see the little yellow thing.
I had a question for Alanna, and I had a question for Diane. And
I'm so sorry.
I had a comment.
I see him now, but
yeah, but it's pretty pale. I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
there's a way to change it.
It's not as bright as it
Yes, we
usually
need to
is.
use yellow
Oh, hi,
hand.
Nori.
Hi, Nori, welcome.
Hi there.
Sorry.
My apologies for being so late.
We're recording.
Yeah,
Ellen,
Ellen.
Okay,
please,
so
and then Alanna.
At first, I'll just ask you, Diane, you said that Trudeau said that he thought that the emergency, whatever, was going to pass, but they
Yeah.
haven't, are they going to allow Parliament to meet again? Is that the idea? How are they going to vote?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. And then my question for Alanna, you had mentioned about you need a form of tax for a global currency or global government. So are you recommending a land value tax that's global? It seems to me that would be
A resource rent collection from transnational resources. Now, we have an example in the International Law of the Seas, which was passed by most UN member states, not the US. But those transnational resources, I mean, the whole ocean. Who owns the ocean? Who owns the moon? Who owns the deep sea mineral nodules in the oceans are highly valuable. Of course, some corporations have the technology to be able to mine them and others not. So the mining of the deep sea resources, there is a high percentage from the profits of that mining that would go to pay for global governance. Same as high real estate in outer space in the geo-orbital zones. Those are the points where you can hang a satellite that balances between the force fields of Earth and Moon. Is highly valuable real estate. And as we know, the satellites are starting to clutter up that area. And we know there's a lot of space garbage out there now. And so who's responsible for clearing that space garbage out of our transnational outer space? That needs to be financed. It would make sense that that would be financed from charges on the geo-orbital zone locations. So you've got the oceans, you've got perhaps the Arctic. Now the Arctic is carved up. You can see maps with nation states, like 5 nation states have claimed the Antarctica. So really trying an effort to keep Antarctica as a transnational zone. So any access to Antarctica could also be a resource rent charge going into the global governance funding. And then global governance would have primarily one thing, a resource rent fund that would collect those resource rents and then distribute them to address pollution, global pollution, environmental restoration, and also as some kind of distribution to the poorest people on the planet, like a kind of could be a public bank on the global level that would then, as a nonprofit bank, give first choice to the poorest people of the planet for loan money for their development issues, so that we start having a more wealth balance between so-called rich nations and poor places. So those are a few ideas, but there's a lot of transnational resources that can be tapped for global governance finance.
It seems to me, though, that if, for example, if you're doing the oceans, I mean, our major problem right now is that we have these billionaires that are verging on, I mean, we probably have trillionaires, we just don't know it. You know, those families that have been collecting interest for 300 years have to be trillionaires by now. And so they can buy whatever they want. So if the deal is you only have access to the ocean if you pay a tax, then you know they'll go in, pay the tax, clean it out of all their precious metals, or whatever is in there, whatever it is they want out of there. I mean, this whole thing about harvesting the floor of the ocean just sounds horrible to me. I mean, what about all that life that's on the floor of the ocean that's going to get killed? Plus, you've got the sonic waves that go through the ocean and kill the whales and so forth. I don't know. It does seem like a tricky issue. I mean, I appreciate that you're thinking about these things, but I just don't know. But
I mean, as in any resource access, it's not just go in and take it and pay some kind of fee. The fee has to be high enough to cover any damages that are caused. Plus, there does need to be rules and regulations environmental regulations before they're giving access to mine mineral resources. So there has to be a lease agreement. It's a kind of a lease fee of how much you pay for access, but also the lease agreement has to have the environmental protections built in. And just as when we move into an apartment, you're supposed to pay a fee, first and last month's rent, that the landlord, if you leave it a mess, can use to pay to clean up the mess you use. That's what we also need to charge upfront for access to mineral resources. That if they finish, the government, we have a way to pay for their mess if they leave a mess. So they have to pay that upfront fee as an environmental protection fee. Carol?
Oh, I sort of agree with Ellen in the danger of regulatory capture like we have with the FDA and the pharmaceutical companies. I could see that the same problem could happen with resource extraction, especially the valuation of life. I don't think you can actually put a dollar amount on the value of life. It's just sort of ludicrous. I think this is.
Where did you get it? Who's talking about that? Talking about the value of mineral resources, tangible mineral resources. What do you mean value of life?
Well, the oceans affect the oxygen, so many of our life support systems. If you damage that, there's a ripple effect, which is huge. You mentioned the scalar and the sonic waves that are destroying whales and dolphins. This is the US military government. They're doing these experiments that are just destroying all the deep sea mammals. They're not paying a price. There's no cost to them to kill off all this life. And I see with the Exxon Valdez disaster, all these deep sea drilling, mining, oil things, all those environmental disasters, the corporations get away with it. They never pay the full damages. If they do, it's a fraction of what they really owe. They actually go out of business. Like right now,
it's a cost of doing business. It's marked off as cost of doing business.
What we started this conversation with is Ginger flashing that book on the global constitution. So this conversation is really about, you guys are excited about the global constitution for the Federation of Earth and these things. And I'm putting out some of the things that need to be added to make it work. So part of a global constitution to make it work is you've got to have an enforcement that does not allow those kinds of things to happen in the oceans. You have to have the rules and regulations in place that you're simply not allowed to put sonar waves that disrupt the whales in the ocean. Now, who's going to pay for that? How should that be paid for? Out of people's working income taxes all over the earth? Or out of the resource rents that the corporations are not paying and that they should pay for access of resources local to global? See, Nori has something.
Yeah, I think that very good points are being raised here, and there's sort of a point that I see as senior, which is something that absolutely needs to be changed. And then everything that you've said, Alanna, totally fits, and everything you've said, Carol and Ellen, totally fit. And that is, we have left out the living portion of the earth in the design of the economic and financial systems. And that goes back to the oikos nomos, oikos logos thing you've, I think, heard me say, where oikos, the Greeks really got it right. Oikos nomos and oikos logos. Oikos logos mean ecology, is oikos is home, logic, or the deep structures or logic of the home, that refers to the earth. And oikos nomos is the rules of the earth, nomos rules. And so what we've done is we've designed the rules of the earth, in other words, the economic system, all the different systems that we govern ourselves, leave out oikos logos. And so we have to take a step back and realize we are part of a fabric of life, and we are impacting it very badly right now because we have left out that whole fabric of life, the whole biosphere. We've left all of that out of the way we've designed the rules for how we play in living with each other on Earth. And so what you're pointing to, Alanna, I think are some very, very good methodologies, you know, the taxing, for example, it's a little bit like the Alaska Fund, you know, that the various ways of capturing value from that which belongs to all of us as citizens of the earth. And we are basically, we are needing to step back and I think do a massive re-education system, re-educating of ourselves for our own great people's reset, because we have left all that out and we don't generally think about that.
Well, it got corrupted. We are under neoliberal economics. Classical economics contains this, what I call golden rule of perennial wisdom teachings around land and the earth as a commons. Classical economics is land, labor, and capital. Land means the whole earth. It became, when it was moving forward towards this third way out of right and left, and Henry George's work was bringing it forward, and it was a large populist movement. The elites paid a lot of money to big schools that were forming economic system, University of Chicago, Columbia University in New York, Johns Hopkins, to create neoliberal economics. This is early 1800s. And they went from three-factor, which was beginning to address the wealth inequality at the source, which is the problem, the land problem, that we privatize the earth and its resources. And they made that factor, land, which is the earth, a subset of capital. And neoliberal economics is only two-factor. It's capital and labor. Always fighting capital later, back and forth, cooperatives being formed, any large degree. But that original corruption of economics, now my research showed that the same big powers of the Rockefeller and the Carnegie that corrupted economics, they corrupted medicine, because they took over medicine and they captured medicine through the Felsner report that said all these other forms of medicine that were present in the early 1900s, all the holistic approaches, nutritional, osteopathic, chiropractic, were in essence quackery. And capturing the American Medical Association and paying schools of medicine that were going in the way of big for-profit medical approaches. They also captured medicine. There's a confluence of the elite capture of economics and the whole field of medicine.
I'm curious who 646 is. Just,
What?
Not sure.
It's Johnanne. It's Johnanne Winchester.
Oh, it's been a few months.
hi.
And we're recording some of our sessions now.
Yes.
So Carol,
good.
Oh, I just wanted to add, I did spend the weekend with David and Kim Martin in Yuba City, and it was a fantastic weekend. And David has been working on this model for 25 years of integral accounting. You could see it on some of his websites, but he gave a 1.5 day workshop, which was really excellent, and it addressed sort of the corruption of our thinking, our stories, our governments, all these systems which sort of envelop humanity at this point, and how to review the world and come up with solutions that work for all of life, which are, I would say, in alignment with everything that we're trying to do. And it was very powerful. And I was very surprised too. David has given a number of sermons at the Church of Glad Tidings, and his mother actually worked, he came from a very religious family, and his mother was tasked with the job of translating the original Bible, I guess, from the Greek to English or something like that. But he knows.
Ago.
Pardon?
But that happened centuries ago, so she must have done something a little different.
She probably did. But he knows his Bible really, really well. And he looks at the language and what's in and what has been left out and where it's been corrupted to try to illuminate what it's really trying to say, and what a lot of people miss and how it's been abused. And it was very interesting too, because he went back to the creation story, Adam and Eve, the garden, all these classic stories, and different ways of interpreting them, which I find to be very useful in a time of chaos, where this system of empire, which is so based on lies, corruption, violence, etc., when the whole narrative is falling apart and we're needing new narratives and new compasses to figure out how to rebuild our culture from the ground up. And so that was the whole purpose of the workshop. It was called Fully Equipped 22, to help give us those kind of tools to, help create the world that we want to see. And I wanted to mention there's a new website that's going to be launched called Prosecute Now, which will have all the criminal charges and allow people to take action to reach the local officials and just hopefully break through in our legal system and start prosecuting the people who are most responsible for the crimes of COVID-19, which is a really good breakthrough. And at the same time, the Australians who've been under the gun for so long, they're putting forward an initiative for a global strike, and also in support of the convoys, also in support of the Canadian effort. So there's just so much organizing happening. There's going to be another COVID con coming up in May. Just a wealth of organizing. I just had to throw that in. But I also wanted to mention that David's sermons, which I think you would find quite interesting, they're available for free at the Church of Glad Tidings website. The workshop, it wasn't recorded. I can't share that with you, but I think you would find his sermons quite interesting, because they're actually quite on point. Anyone else want to jump in?
Well, there is the Judeo-Christian, Islamic, Abrahamic faith traditions of economic justice that have been lost or corrupted. And years ago, I came across a book called Ownership, Early Christian Teachings by Charles Avila. And it's a story, it took me 30 years to finally connect in person with Charles. And so we've become colleagues working together the past few years. And I'll have lots more to say about Charles' work, but I'm about to, third down on my to-do list is compilation, at the top is compilation of documents that have the resource rent policy, the land value tax policy, and Green Party platforms, environmental platforms. There are many. And then so far to the left, started neither right nor left, but up in front. They need to get the land tax and the public banking financial mechanisms, where again, right now they're very divided. But then third is to come.
Oh dear, Alanna, you're cutting out.
Yeah, you're cutting out. I need to go. Thank you all very much.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Ellen.
Bye.
thank you for joining us, Ellen.
Yeah, thank you all for your mutual support. This is great.
Yeah.
So it's simply to put that, can you hear me now? That Judeo-Christian economic thing, and putting that document together of other sources, I'm putting that out. So I'm not coming through clearly. Who else wants to talk?
Ginger.
Johnanne could say something also.
Okay, so who's
Ginger, then
next?
Johnanne, I guess.
Huh? Who's next?
Ginger, then Johnanne.
Okay, all right. I think that the effort to correctly utilize the scriptures and the original narrative is really beautiful. The key, though, is going to be just as the key is right now in the whole political scene is how are we going to frame a narrative, even if it comes from biblical tradition or from hippies or from whoever. How are we going to frame a narrative that's going to be able to catch people's to be able to feel the truth of it, to catch people into this narrative? George Monbiot wrote this whole thing about the new narrative and the insistence that we have to have a new narrative. However, what he did was he said there was this narrative that had been used through the centuries for political and social change. And he found the bare bones of the story. It's a story, it's a mythology. And when people grab onto that mythology, they get all enthusiastic, they rise up, they, basically the whole idea is that there's nefarious rulers and then dominators, and then the people, become courageous, and there's the heroes, and they rise up and they take down the dominators, and then the credits roll like in a movie. It's like it's all okay. Now the good people are there, and balance and harmony is restored to the earth.
Happily ever after.
Yes. So what I'm seeing here is that yes, we could use that narrative frame. However, something else is afoot here. And we all know about this sense of consciousness. We're moving from this whole 3D limited consciousness into the greater realms of imagination and possibility of the fifth dimensional possibility. I mean, you can see that as pretty woo-woo, but I do see, though, that humanity is evolving. And all of us here are kind of pushing the leading edge of it, seeking to find a greater narrative, the greater story, a greater overview, a greater perspective that can bring unification and harmony to people. So looking back at George Monbiot's narrative, the narrative is that of war. It's basically the same plot that you see in all the high body count movies, right? It's that there's some hero that goes against the villain, and generally in those movies there's this scene near the end where it's mano a mano, where the big villain and the big hero fight it out, and then peace returns to everybody, and yay, we're saved, and this is such a popular plot. However, in consciousness, we've got to move beyond the war-based plot. We've got to go to, and Lazarus, a channeled entity, I've attended several of his workshops, and he talks about the warrior model of reality and the adventurer model. The warrior model is into conflict and if you're not with me, you're against me. That's either or, good, bad, or and the adventure is like, I'm willing to engage. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to dance. Everybody has their perspective. And it's basically a very magical, non-violent, and I'm saying magical in the good sense. I'm not saying in fantasy la la land. I'm saying really to look at it that we're all that, like the shamanic perspective, that everything is alive. We are, this is all our family, brothers and sisters, the plants, the animals, humans, etc. And there's a certain magic, there's a certain mystical connection with everything. And the adventure is the one who finds that, who lives according to that. So the new narrative, if we could find a new narrative that is not about bringing down the evil ones, and then we step in, which of course, over time, then our new dominators become the evil ones, and this cycle repeats itself. Instead of going there, how can we imagine an adventurer model of narrative that could catch people
Archetype.
and excite people and get people to come together.
Actually, that was sort of the topic of our conversation last Wednesday when we were when we had a 90-minute Zoom with Paul Fitzgerald and Liz Gould and their
Gail
new
gave a
book, The
presentation, I heard the
Valedictorian.
whole thing. So
And it was
good.
all on looking at mystical imperialism, the flawed dominator model, how these dominator culture, they usually go insane, they destroy themselves, they destroy the earth, they destroy humanity in the process. And the antidote is empowering people to find their own God courage, the deepest part of themselves, their best selves.
Yeah.
And just that is what empowers them to take on, you know, Ottawa and the world and create new systems. But once they find that power within themselves and they create a true narrative coming from their heart and soul, and they join with other people. And one of the points that David made in his sermon was this idea of not dominion, but we need to find our best selves so that we can actually serve. And that this is like the highest form of love is when you serve life and you are so in touch with the divinity within that you realize your purpose is to create this paradise, this heaven here and now with other people on this planet. And that means, you know, doing a lot of healing, self-healing, but also extending it outward to everything that you can see and touch.
Did you say that was recorded?
Oh, our thing last week? Yeah. If you just, I'll
The Wednesday one.
Yeah,
Because I and a group of other people
Oh.
are trying to dream up the new narrative, the new mythology, and to envision the future direction. So if we could, that would be good input for our group too.
Another source that might be useful for you, Ginger, is, do you know the name Dwayne Elgin?
No.
Dwayne has been collecting stories of basically new narrative stories. My book Butterfly, my story Butterfly is one of them. And the last I looked, he had something like 13 different narratives that basically are describing kind of a new world, a new reality.
Oh, cool. Do you spell that D-U-A-N-E or D-W?
D-U-A-N-E, E-L-G-I-N.
Okay.
And he calls those people the cultural creatives.
Well, no, the term cultural creatives, which I mentioned in my TEDx talk, which Ginger, you might enjoy my TEDx talk.
I would, yes.
I go into all of this there. You can find it at bestgame.org. And basically I lay out five, what I did was I got quite depressed in the late 90s, and I was trying to figure out, you know, it looked as if everything was going so bad so fast. What could we do? And then I had the aha, maybe I could study the last four major revolutions of history and find what they all had in common that worked. And that maybe we could take those elements and do something nonviolently and make it beautiful. And so it was a 2 or 3 year quest to do that. And I found new people who have new values, new ideas, new ways of languaging, new mythologies, maybe new story, which is what you're referring to as the narrative. New game. If you tell a new story about reality, then you wake up in the morning and you do different things, and that's your new game. And then new toys, and that's tools, technologies, management systems, all kinds of different things. And then the final one was new money. And in my TEDx talk, I talk about the first three. I've been thinking I really need to do one on the new money, because that one is, I think we're approaching the time where that is, you see, we could essentially cut off a whole lot of stuff if we just shift into using a different form of money. That's what each of these revolutionaries did. The American, French, Soviet, and Chinese revolutions all created a new form of money. And basically the covenant the new covenant was, you like the new story? You like the new game? You want to play? Okay, here's the new money. Let's pretend this is real and we'll use this in all our transactions and we'll honor this new money and we'll carry out the new game. And we have enough. And what happened though, in those 4 revolutions, they did not unpack deeply enough the structure of the old money systems. They really, and Alanna, you've done some really seminal work in thinking about that. I think I have as well, in terms of things that we need to really look deeply at the reward and incentive structures, okay, that we have in society, because those change everything. I mean, earlier someone was talking about I think it was you, Carol, was talking about the way the pharmaceutical companies and the great big companies are destroying things, and they just, they get slapped with a little fine and they keep on going. And I made the comment, cost of doing business. They basically don't care because they're just getting a little slap on the wrist compared to the massive amounts of money they're making from whatever the horrible thing is they're doing that's damaging so much. And that's getting usually paid by the taxpayer, And anyway, there's George Santayana said, "He who does not study history is condemned to repeat it." You've heard that phrase, I imagine. The Huddle corollary is, "We who study process can transcend history." And if we really get deep into looking at the process of how we interact with each other, how we design things and how that design works in the moment, we can totally redesign things very, very intelligently and wisely. And that's why I laid out earlier, I mentioned the whole oikos nomos, oikos logos, because I think that's a very senior narrative. It's related also to the goose that lays the golden eggs, that story from Aesop, that they killed the goose and it didn't lay the golden eggs anymore because it was dead, right? And that's what the biosphere is doing for us. It's producing wealth. And where I think, and I don't know, Alanna, maybe you can enlighten us a bit on this. In the Georgist economics and the land value taxation and the whole consideration of land, is it looking at, for example, nature provides so many services for us that things like, for example, bees pollinating. If you kill off the honeybees and you have to do the pollination mechanically, what would the value of that? How do we accord value to these processes in nature? I mean, we've only discovered an infinitesimal part of the value of plants. There are so many plants, we just do not know what they have. And I think Ellen was talking about in the bottom of the ocean and you too, Carol, I think the messing up with the sonar waves and so forth, that we're destroying the big mammals, the whales. And the whales have a huge role that they play that is unknown to most people, a huge role they play in regulating climate because of the way they knock plankton up into the surface of the ocean, and that produces massive amounts of oxygen and takes CO2 out of the atmosphere. And so I think a huge piece is we need to educate people, and people need to be educated, and we need to change literally everything, starting from how a little baby comes into this world. I happen to remember back to the day I was born, and I was seriously traumatized almost immediately. And then day 3, when they put casts on my feet, and I remember that vividly. And so, the thing is that most people don't have those memories because I don't know why, but I just happen to be one of the ones who do remember. And I can say that if we were to change the way we bring children into the world and look longitudinally at the whole life flow of a person and look at the process the way we're doing everything. I remember, for example, going from a private school that was wonderful into the public school, and oh my God, it was like going into a prison. And the way I coped was I turned off a switch in my head, and one day I realized after a couple of hours coming home and feeling super, super, super uncomfortable, I'd forgotten to turn the switch back on. And I realized that's what all the other kids had done. And whenever I've told that story, to my contemporaries, they all recognize what I'm talking about. that they turned the switch off in their heads, some of them for a very long time. And I think that's what we're going through right now, is a lot of people are waking up and they're kind of going, wait, there's more to this than I've been thinking. And I think in terms of creating a kind of a collective narrative, we really need to have people share their stories, find all kinds of venues, ways for people to share their stories. And that we're doing that right now in the help tip the global domino to create dominoes to create heaven on earth. And we're proposing creating heaven on earth as a new goal, of an inspiring vision for humanity to aim for. Well, what is heaven on earth? That's the conversation. What's heaven on earth to each of you, you know?
Hello, Johnanne. Johnanne would like to speak.
Yes. Hi, Johnanne.
Hi there. So I have been monitoring all the wonderful posts everyone's been doing every day in the group. I know Alanna and consider her one of my most deep sisters alive on the planet. Nori and I go back to at least founding mothers, which she instituted years ago.
Right.
and Diane, yep, and Diane Perlman, I slept in her bed in September and stayed in her home in Washington during the time of Ida, when I had gone to Washington for the 58th anniversary march of the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech, etc. So these three ladies I've known for quite a long time. We met under various circumstances. And so I haven't been on the calls and I haven't been opening every email, but I've been deeply appreciative monitoring the work that everyone has continued in this cohort community. I like the term beloved community. So what I've been doing is just coming from very deep sabbatical retreat where I didn't talk to anybody for a whole year except my son, who lives here in Portland, Oregon, which is why I have a base here. So there are a couple of key things in this aspect. I'm beginning to float to people who are in certain positions the idea that we need a new constitution in North America, because it was a scarred document to begin with. It's all in patriarchal terms. We need a new charter at the UN, and it even says in the charter that they'll review it after 5 years and update it, which has never happened. And the guys and girls who are in the middle of the battles, you know, as politicians and players at the UN and so on, all go, oh, well, afraid of that. And then I fight, and I need a new charter here in Portland, Oregon, and itself. And Oregon was founded as a KKK enclave way back when, and the women here would sew the hoods for the KKK and make money off making the costumes for the KKK and so on. So, and I tell people that Ecuador, where Nori is doing her wonderful new paradise gardening, farming, etc. work, and being a kind of a major antenna there, as I think of some of us, we're antenna for this transformational new story, new narrative, and how we deal with most of the great documents that the world religions are based on are written in patriarchal language. God is he, you know, Jesus was he, Muhammad was he. I won't go on, but you can hear where I'm coming from with all of that. And I try not to be angry about it, and frustrated and outraged, but it is what it is. And this conversation that has been ongoing for a while, I apologize for coming on late. I spent time watching the Hopi prophecy that Alanna had sent, because part of the banner that I carry is the Hopi prophecy. There will come a time of rainbow. There will come a time of great earth shaking and earth cleansing. That's the polar shift scenario. Astrophysical, heliophysically driven, heating up the core of the earth. That's the course I'm writing right now, getting people to wake up to that. It's not all human-induced stuff. And what the core of that is in terms of the physics of consciousness and diving into the actual biophysical, you know, biological, whatever aspect of communing with the earth is all about. So I go back to say to people, look, how long ago was it, Nori, that 27,000 town hall meetings happened in Ecuador and a new constitution, what was written, which enshrined the
2007
rights
and
of the
8.
earth? Thank you.
2007, 2008.
So what's that, 13 years ago, something?
15.
Right. Yeah, right. I'm sorry.
It was
Slow
completed,
when
the
I'm.
process was completed in 2008.
Were you there when that was happening?
Yes, yes. Well, except
What-
that I didn't even know it was going on. It was maybe in 2008 sometime was when I learned about it. But it had already happened.
Right, right. And so the point is, it's easy to do. It doesn't even have to take that long with all the tools we have now.
Right.
And I think it has to come maybe from people like have been gathered in this cohort, but also through the kids. And I'm thinking people like David Hogue and the Parkland kids and some of the others, and even younger ones who, like I have a 12-year-old grandson who's playing computer games. You know, you have to yank him away from it. But, you know, he was just so thrilled when they gave him a teaching role where he got to do a little teaching thing for 5 minutes or something in the Minecraft cohort. So there are these openings that are happening where the new shoots, the new grass that's coming up. I didn't get to watch the whole prophecy all the way through, Alanna, because I wanted to get on the call, and then something else blocked that with the installation of something on my computer. So I apologize for being late to the call, but I have trusted deeply that this convergence, this council that you've been carrying for these many months now. How long has this been going on, Alanna? 2 years?
About that.
No, we just
Something,
started
right.
Cape Pasta over a year ago, and we just started our
Right.
meetings.
Could I speak?
Yeah, you did something before Cape
But there was the conversation thing that you changed, basically changed the name, but I think it was the same continuation.
Right.
Right,
And
exactly.
this is,
It's the same thing. We just called it our What's Happening conversation. And speaking of
Right.
conversations, we've been on a long time, and everybody has contributed just such beautiful pearls of wisdom and clarity and vision. It's just so wonderful.
I would
I
like
think that
to
we
as
do
well.
need to wind down for today. And I hear Marjorie wants to say something. And then Carol, if you could, as moderator, lead us to a close for today after
Okay.
Marjorie speaks. That makes sense?
Okay,
Well,
it's
Johnanne, had you finished?
Well, she could-
That's enough for
and I-
now. The
Okay.
one little thing I want to say is two things. One, Diane Perlman has created a wonderful deck of cards that is a playbook and a teaching thing, and there's a workbook also on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights at the UN. And there are these tools and things that could bring recurring revenue in if we push them out through our systems. And the second thing is that aside from the new charter and the new constitution and so on, I'm going to be going back to New York and begin really lobbying at the UN and with the member states and so on a renaissance of something that was a year-long thing called the International Year of Light, which was started by Ghana and Mexico at UNESCO, and then it came and got full approval from the General Assembly at the UN. That's how these 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10-year things happen. And it was about having the big light-based technology companies, which is everything from telephony to Intel to Cisco to the internet to Zoom and all these other companies, the billionaire companies, Alphabet, Facebook, blah, blah, whatever we think of those platforms and the corruption of them. But the idea is that there would be sponsorship and funds to do things, exploring the new mythology, the new narrative, where do we want to go from here? Because we are beings that are based on frequency modulation. We're beings of light and sound. Light and music is the core of what makes the human vehicle tick, that spark of light that they're talking about in the Hopi prophecy that she sent this morning. So that's sort of an architectural approach that I have. But I think this whole thing of what Ecuador did is very important to bring forward.
Yep. Thank you so much. We have to move on because we do have to wrap this up. Marjolaine, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to say that my vision, of a global theater piece. I've been doing this all my life in bits and pieces, performance artistry, and also during a workshop, I don't call it workshop, a movement theater lab, we'll tell the story of humanity awakening. It's a new mythology, I call it. Everything everyone was talking about today is exactly what I've framed out and what I'm working toward. And I can post on Que Pasa, so you'll see a little bit better my bio and also the work I've been involved with, but it's taking it to the next level, a theatrical level. It's not a protest, it's just a new story, the new narrative. And what we've done that's so impressive and valuable, and what we imagine it would be like if we were living that way. And we're telling that story. And the more we tell that story, the more real it becomes. And anyone can take part in this, whether you've had theater experience or not, because of the way that I work. It's very exciting and very simple and accessible to everyone. I don't know if I have time just to read this short thing right now. Basically, it's called Accelerating the Creative Pulse, and recognizing that theater is an ancient and viable format for transformation, we proceed on a course of action that affirms the exquisiteness of being alive and awake right now at this most fragile and pivotal point in time. Fully embracing, cultivating, shifting into higher consciousness, this elegant odyssey transcends, transforms, and transports us to a field of unprecedented pure potentiality and conscious presence, experiencing a stylized improvisatory performance art, an awakened sense of our essence, open to actors, dancers, writers, evolutionaries, activists, bohemians, novices, enthusiasts, musicians, poets, vocalists, philosophers, performance artists, and all. Come one love, come all. Please reach out to me. It's on the move. Gotta evolve this now so make a difference. Kind of like the way hair was, a really big piece that everyone knew it across the planet, made such a difference. And this will too. But it's taking it out of the ordinary and bringing it into theatrics.
Yes, that's exactly what I want to perform.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
Thank you
and
all for.
also I was saying to Alanna last week, it was so beautiful, I think it was 4 of you, just and that I would like to shape it. I would like to help her shape it. And I guess one of the things that I envision right now that we could get to is the women's Greek chorus. It doesn't have to be just women, but speaking out, weaving in and out of each other, bodies, voices, our truths. And it would be pretty simple to do this if you worked with me online, even a haiku piece that you can work on, a poem that you've written, or words that you hear from other people, repeating it like that. Very easy to get it going, and very dramatic and very life-changing for anyone who takes part in it or who happens to view it, I think.
Thank you so much.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I appreciate you all. I love you all. And let's hope that we can get together next week and have more time together.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Aloha. Aloha all.